Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Asby Bridge. I have a real treat for you this week. We're not going to be talking so much with our coaches, but I wanted to bring you a very special movie that is going to be helping those of us who are on the spectrum get our word out that we're not disabled, but we're actually challenged. And I have with me Mark Vidano, who is a actor, and he is portraying a grandfather. And I'll let him tell you more about it in a moment. But it's going to be a lot of fun. It's really going to put us at the awareness of the society, the awareness of who we are. And Mark and I were talking a little bit earlier before we started the recording about how some of the different traits come up that we've experienced. So we wanted to save all the good part for you. So without further ado, well, all of the Aspies are out on YouTube telling you what the traits of autism are. You know that the mission of the Aspie Bridge is to help you, the autistic individual or neurodiverse. Some of us are also ADHD or ADD or some other, well, I should say we were diagnosed as other because until the year 2000 for boys or the year 2008 for girls, we had all these other explanations, is what I like to call it, not labels, explanations of why we behaved in a certain way. It wasn't until 2000 for the boys and 2008 for the girls that we finally had a term autism for why we behave in certain ways. And as you know, I'm here as a torchbearer to help you realize that I've gone through all these experiences. And you may hear Mark say that he's gone through some experiences of learning that we can do things a little differently. But I want to remind you, we are not disabled. Yes, a lot of people may say that's an ableist idea. But if you can look at your individual traits and see that they're not bad, they're just different. And as I say, there are so many people out there telling you what the traits of autism are. Let's have a little fun and help you go back into society knowing that there's nothing wrong with you. We don't have to fix you. A lot of people think that they need to fix someone who's on the spectrum. And that's just not true. We have to learn to accept each other for who we are, not fix each other for who we are not. And I'm hoping that with Mark's movie, we'll get to more family members to understand that we need your support. We need your understanding. We need your validation because otherwise you're going to continue to treat us as less than neurotypicals. And that's not what we want. So without further ado, Mark Verdano is here as an actor, the grandfather of Angel. I'm going to let him take it from here. Welcome,
Hi,
Mark.
thank you. Well, thank you for having me. I'm excited to talk. And I
Perfect.
apologize. My dog is barking in the background, so if that comes
Can't
through,
hear him.
oh good. Good, good, good.
Can't hear him at all. Zoom is great that way. It blocks out a lot of noise. So
Awesome.
perfect. Would you like to tell us about your role in the movie and how this movie began? The idea of this movie began in terms of what was your desire to get the message out?
Sure. Um, I'll try and make this as concise as possible. My role in the movie was I'm the executive producer. I do play the grandfather. The movie's about a relationship between a grandfather and his granddaughter's on the spectrum. We can get into that a little bit more, but and then I also helped co-write it with my fantastic director Marco Bazzi, who I've worked with in the past on some of his films. It started, well, it really started from, and you can appreciate this because you're in the same line. My wife, Sharon, who is a life coach, was doing a Brave Thinking Institute 3-day immersion, weekend immersion, which was online, right? And so we were doing it together. And originally, it's like, oh, I just want to know, kind of what the lingo is and understand what she's getting into to be able to support her. So we did it in different rooms. So we had our own experiences going on. We weren't really talking about it as we were doing it. At the end of the 3 days, I came out of I mean, we were going in and out of the room. I didn't stay in there locked in for 3 days, but I came out and I said, I need to produce my own movie. I need to do something that I feel good about, that I feel like I've got a character that I can really, get my acting chops into, if you will.
Mm.
And she said, great, I'm going to be a life coach. Well, we both had these big dreams. It's not like either one of us could go, well, no, why are you doing that? So that was
Yay.
that was the genesis of it. And so started right away talking with Marco about the script and seeing if he would do it with me. And so we got to the point where we could. And the idea came from a couple different, I find that, creative projects, no matter what the art is, you kind of build on top of things, right? You do something, you go, oh yeah, then, oh, what if I try this? And then it grows into a life of its own.
Oh, I
So,
know that. I know that very well. I find that with my creative project, it's like, oh no, it needs this one more thing here. So I get that. Keep going.
right? Yeah, you just keep building on it, right? And so that's kind of the way this happened. It was, um, we talked a little bit about it when I was growing up, and I've had this question in my head for a while. As I was growing up, I stimmed a lot up into my teens. I mean, really into my young adulthood, but I was able to manage it better. When I was an infant, my mom said I would rock my head against the crib headboard relatively hard. I'd get on all fours and just kind of bang my head against the headboard. As I got into my teens, that became more of like hitting my head against the pillow to go to sleep, or rocking myself to sleep, or hitting my head against a chair or whatever. If I was just kind of sitting watching TV, that kind of that was my self-stimulation. And my mom took me to the doctor. Obviously, this is back in the 60s, and she's like, I don't know what's going on. He keeps, banging his head against the headboard. I'm worried that he's hurting it and hurt himself, or there's something happening. And the doctor said, but just like, the old days, you fell down. Hey, you got dirt in there, just scrape the dirt off. Don't worry about it. His thing was basically, don't worry about it. He'll grow out of it. Well, I didn't really grow out of it. I learned to manage it. To your point, I learned to manage that behavior. It was embarrassing. I couldn't go to my friend's house and spend the night because I couldn't go to sleep without rocking or banging my head. And so as I get older, and we start hearing more about the spectrum and people being on the spectrum and autism, I started questioning, you know was I? I mean, I guess you can't really, am I on the spectrum? I've never been diagnosed based upon my experiences as I was a kid, right? And and the question also became, why does this seem to be growing? Now a lot of people will say we just know more about it, we know what to look for, and all that. And so this is my personal question. Is that really the case, or is it a combination of that and our environment, or what we're eating, or uh, many people will say it's not vaccines, but is it vaccines? And I love the fact that RFK is actually going to look into it, because I think we should be asking more questions, right?
Yeah,
And
definitely,
or
definitely.
demanding more answers, or getting more clarity, or whatever it is. Because if we can um, divert this through better eating or whatever else it may be, great. Let's do. I mean, we should be able to do that. We should know what we need to do. And the question also in my head was, if I had this behavior, if I was born today and I had this behavior, where would I be? Because I have a great degree of confidence that the doctor would have said, "Oh, your son is on the spectrum, and we need to either put him in, I'm going to be put in a box, and here's where I'm going to be, and that may include medication." And then how do I develop, and what kind of person do I become if that happens to me, right? And I feel like, uh, I've been very successful. I don't, no one would question or even ask if I had any behaviors like that when I was a child or anything like that. You know, again, what would I, but would that be the same case if I was on drugs and put into a box saying this is what you are, right? So I just had a lot of questions, and
Yeah.
as I was thinking about the script that I wanted to write, I was like, yes, I want something that is it's an intense drama, but it is a drama. I mean, it's a feel good at the end of the day,
A
So, um,
documentary in a sense too, from the standpoint that we're educating people on family relationships and
yes,
how you can really get in sync with your granddaughter in the film to show families that this is what's needed. Because I can tell you that because autism is still pretty new, pretty new. I mean, we're not talking even more than a little bit, we're not even talking 2 decades old. As far as, well, for the men, it's a little bit more, it's about 2000, as I said. For the women, it's not even 2 decades old of women even possibly being on it. So it is still fairly new. So families getting into saying, wait, you weren't autistic in 2000, but you are now? How did that happen? It's like it didn't happen. It's just that there's now an explanation for all the challenges I've had since I was born. And yeah, there is a lot of controversy, as you say, between the vaccines, the food we're eating. It is a um genetic. We don't know exactly where, sometimes in our family it is. I can tell you that because we're still in a male populated world, male organized world, that the men, and I'm pretty sure, I can't diagnose my dad now, he's passed, but I can almost tell you that he, well, let's just bring up the Big Rock show, Big Bang Theory. My dad was like Sheldon, but to money. So he had all the behaviors that I started to really watch him. He had all the behaviors, but because men weren't cultured to be etiquette and manners and such, he was able to go up his ladder and still be very quiet and be very calm inside. I saw facial mannerisms in his eyes and such that were very similar. I saw a lot of commonalities once I got to know myself. And I'm like, I wonder. Well, as I say, he's passed, so we'll never
mhm,
know. But I still
right.
see the commonalities. But let's go back to the Big Bang Theory on show. Sheldon was never kept out of employment because they allowed the science of his mind to get him to high places in employment. Women don't have that same um leg up or the same opportunities, because if we can't talk exactly like our colleagues who are neurotypical, we tended not to get the jobs. We weren't being seen for our gifts, we were being seen for our inability to communicate the way another female does. So that's where I found I had the most trouble. Do I stim? I twiddle my thumbs, I tap my toes, but people don't see that. They more see my what they call proprioception, pre-proprioception, which is I would sometimes trip over my own feet or have
Mm,
motor skill issues. But that was all blamed on another diagnosis I had. So nobody ever said, but it could also be. So, like as you were talking, oh, she'll grow out of it. It's just like this. And that's just all part of her hypothyroidism. But it wasn't. It wasn't, but it wasn't ever examined. So let's just bring it back to your movie for a moment. You playing your grandfather who sees your granddaughter. will hopefully help society change the way they view their extended family members better who are on the
Hope
spectrum.
so. I hope so, and that was part of the goal of the movie too. Not only family members, um, but also just society in general. I think we see, I'll just take it to the extreme and say, we see a kid having a temper tantrum in a store. The mother does not know what to do, and we blame it on parenting.
Mhm.
We don't know what that parent is going through. I mean,
Yeah.
you know, protecting her child, protecting herself, maybe, uh, dealing with this day in and day out, the patience that takes, and then the insecurity of not knowing when your child, you know, ages out of a system, if they're in the system, or you pass, who's going to take care of that
Yeah.
your child for you? They may be an adult now, but who's going to take care of your child for you? All of those questions. We want people to, when we wrote the movie, we wanted people to walk out and have questions in their head. Just ask the question. We're not telling you what to think. We're not telling you how to feel. But we want you to have a question like, yeah, why aren't we getting more answers? Or what would this be like because Martin, who's the grandfather, myself, has been estranged from the family. There's a backstory to him and his daughter, and they don't really talk for about 7 years. So he hasn't seen his granddaughter in 7 years. His daughter passes in an accident, and so he's the last family member left to take care of his grandchild. And he comes in, and he's a boomer, politically incorrect, doesn't have the skills doesn't understand this because he hasn't really been around it, and walks in, and boom, here you go, deal with it, right? And or figure it out. I shouldn't say deal with it, but figure it out.
Mhm.
And
Yep.
he wants to figure it out. He lost the relationship with his daughter, and now he wants to he wants to make it up by having a relationship with his granddaughter. But that relationship is challenged from the very beginning. And it's challenged from two ways. One, he doesn't understand this. He doesn't know he needs some skills, which he doesn't have. And he's got a behavioral therapist who sees that he can't take care of this, that he can't take care of Angel the way that she needs to be taken care of, in her opinion, and files an emergency custody order to try and take her away from him. So we've got this whole circle around, going around this turmoil of them trying to develop their relationship, Angel and Martin, and Leah, who's the behavioral therapist, trying to take her away from him when he really wants to make up. He wants to he wants to make this family whole again, right?
Yes.
And
Yes.
at the end of the day, it's not really the story about Angel. It's the story about his transformation and
Mm.
him, dealing with his own issues, and how she helps him to deal with it. So I think it's just a beautiful story.
It is. I mean,
I'm partial, but
well, I think it's so needed, and I can speak from my own personal situation. And this is where I applaud you the most by portraying this because up until now, because it's still fairly new, families don't want to change their beliefs that they have to change. I mean, I'm living this. I am so living this myself. No, you're not autistic because you weren't when you were a baby. And by the way, you're too sensitive. We got to change that. Instead of it being, wow, I hadn't considered that. Maybe this trait is going to be a little bit higher than most people because you are on the spectrum. Let me see what I can do to make it easier or more comfortable for you. That's what I would love to hear. Instead, what I'm being told is, no, you got to fix it. You got to be the person that we thought you were before you found out who you were. And if
mm,
that means that we need to control you, control your money, control your lifestyle, control, just as you were saying with the box, I have been put into that literal box. And if I were what they consider autism 3 levels, level 3 are those that are unfortunately not capable of taking care of themselves at all because they don't have communication and they will never live independently. They just don't have the skills. Now, level 2 are all of those individuals that can communicate, but still they can't drive themselves around. And there are times I'm not sure I can even drive myself around. It goes back to skills and everything, but they're not living independently either because they still need day in, day out. And then there's a level 1, which is where I'm at. I'm capable of living by myself, but that doesn't mean I always make the best decisions because I get thrown into a situation where there's a conflicting messaging. Okay, they say this is the right way. They say this is the right way, and I get stuck in the, well, which way is it?
Mm-hmm.
And I was trying to even tell my brother the other day, I'm like, we all know the sun rises in the east. That's a fact. And then, well, let's see. Is it better to have daylight savings or is it not better to have daylight saving? And that's where you take a truth and then you all of a sudden have an opinion based in, well, the farmers needed daylight savings, but they don't want daylight savings. And I would find for me that my biggest challenge was I just want the facts. I just want the facts. And if you're not going to tell me the facts, why bother expressing your opinion as far as I'm concerned? Because if you can't give me one is the right path, I called it a roadmap. If you're going to tell me go left to get to the route and the other person says, no, go right, I'm left saying, but
It's
which
very
one?
confusing. It's very confusing. Well, you brought up a kind of a theme in the beginning of the movie, actually, too, where Martin does come again. He's an old fart, man. He's an ex-cop, and he comes in and he's like, "What are you doing? This is stop acting this way," you know, basically trying to almost discipline her into acting normal or what he thinks is normal. And that's the transformation that happens over the film is she teaches him a lot about himself, first of
Mm-hmm.
all, and then the patience and the compassion and the relationship, how they can have a relationship even with these boundaries that need to happen within that. And it's, to me, I have it in my I've watched the rough cut a couple times, and I think I think that it paints the picture and it tells the story the way I'm trying to convey it to you. I'm interested in finding out if other people think the same. If they come out of it and go, oh yeah, I saw how you were uncomfortable, how she was uncomfortable, and I saw how that relationship matured into a beautiful. I mean, there's some turmoil in it. Marco will tell you I want people to feel uncomfortable in this movie because uh, those are the times where you one start thinking, and we want people to walk out with those questions, and two, it's a little bit more memorable. So, to give you an example, we'll see Angel from 3 different perspectives in the movie. We see her from what we might say we would see her from the outside, like what we might see, right, where she's very calm. She sometimes seems disattached or unattached from, like at her mom's funeral, an emotional disattached, and then or detached. And then we see her from her perspective, what we are interpreting as her perspective, um hyper focused on some things, doesn't like to have physical touch. And that's not an internal's perspective, but from an internal's perspective, hyper focused, um, a little agitated at times, obviously anxious. We try and show her what we think is her internal struggle as we see her totally calm and from the outside. And then then we wanted to give a third element, which would be Angel's perspective of herself. So she has a boy in school that, is new in school, and she's got a crush on him. And she's daydreaming about them being together. She's really into fishing, or not fishing. She's really into fish. She's daydreaming about them being together. And in that moment, they're fishing. He's got his arms around her. They're laughing. They're having a great time. By all intents and purposes, we might look at it and then say she's normal. And the reason that we want to do that is because Angel doesn't think that she's on the spectrum, or that she's different than anyone else, or she just sees herself as Angel, right?
Yep.
And so those are the three perspectives that we give to Angel in the movie, which I think is unique, and I think it's fun, and I think it brings us into the story a
Oh,
little.
it's very helpful. It's very helpful. And I like the idea that you want them to be people to be uncomfortable, because that's where they start to say, what can I do myself to make this relationship better? They don't come in with an ego like they have to change. I'm going to change them. They have to change. So by you bringing up that question in their mind, making them uncomfortable, and then seeing at the end of the movie that there's a transformation, I always say it takes two people to change a relationship. When Sharon and I know this, and I'm sure you saw a little bit of from the Dream Builder Live. It's not just one person that has to change a situation for a relationship to improve. It's two people who have to find their halfway ground in the middle. And you making people uncomfortable to question themselves of, how can I make this situation, this relationship, this particular scenario more loving and supportive. I love that. That's going to get people to say, I play a part too. I am neurotypical, but I play a part in how this woman is going to go on to life. I always say that if I had been supported from a young age to be empowered to get better jobs, to learn how to interview, to learn how to be confident in myself, who knows where I would have been? I heard you say that earlier. Who knows where I would be now if I had received that loving support? Like, okay, we understand that this is the situation in front of us, as you said with Martin and Angel. It's not easy. I get it. It's going to be hard, hard, hard at times, but I can change too. And that's the big message that I want people to get is, I have to change too if I want this relationship to improve. And the fact that you said that you are essentially trying to make up for lost time for what you lost with your own daughter in losing your own daughter, and now the willingness is huge. It takes all that ego out the door and says, it's not my problem, they have to change, to say, I have a place where I can improve this life because I didn't do the best the first time around. Let's just say the first time around. So
Yeah.
you're now saying, I have a vested interest to make Angel's life better. And what a beautiful story that is. And the fact that you come out transformed because you've learned from her. And I
That's
think
that's
so.
that's the big thing is she does change me.
Yeah.
She changes a little bit as well. I mean, but that's just more of a personal relationship with me that changes, not necessarily her thinking. My thinking changes at the end of the movie. But I do walk in, to your point. When I first walk in, I walk in with a lot of ego. I, you know, I think I'm the man. Here. I am here to take care of my family, and I am going to make this work, and I'm going to make up for what I didn't do right with my daughter, right? And then I get humbled real quick.
Do you have any parts in the movie where you try and control the situation?
Oh,
Do you,
there are a few, yeah.
and
There's one in particular that I won't talk about specifically, but it is it's physical control. And it's probably the most uncomfortable part of the movie. And that is where Leah, the behavioral therapist, decides that I am not fit to take care of Angel, and she's going to take try and get emergency custody. So I'll leave it at that. But yes,
Yeah, we
there,
don't
there.
want to give too much of the movie away. We want people to go see it. Yeah, in my case, it was emotional control. What are you talking
Mhm.
about? And so this now brings in, and there are studies now really coming in, which is interesting, where the emotional growth of a child with a parent that may not understand them can really get pretty tense. So I find with myself, I go in between, well, is this an autistic moment or is this a emotional neglect, emotional control, emotional negligence? Because there are times when it's like, well, you can trying to control the way I behave, and that would be gaslighting, or you're trying to control my environment so it's better. And sometimes unskilled family members try and control the person, not the environment. And that's a big thing, is don't try and control another person. Try and control the environment so that they're not as triggered by what you're doing. And I would love to teach my mom that. I would love to teach her that her thinking that tough love is gonna change me is only gonna get me even more triggered and wanna
Mhm.
isolate more. Is there any part in the movie where Angel is like, "I'm out of here, Grandpa. I'm out of here. I can't deal with it. I need my alone time." Is there any part of the movie where she goes into isolation, where she's like, "I just don't want to talk to you right now"?
Oh, there's a couple times where she gets angry with me or frustrated, and goes into the room and props the chair against the door and doesn't want to have anything to do with me. Um, yes, there are those times, or she'll go outside. She has a podcaster that she loves listening to because she loves his voice, and uh, she'll go out into the front yard and listen to him while I'm because she's angry with me. Yeah, so there's a couple of those where she takes her own space, a couple of those moments. It
Do you
there's
react?
the whole
How
movie is really those kinds of situations and how we both react to them. So, it's yes, there's quite a few now specifically for her taking her own personal time. There's a couple. Yeah.
Mhm. Do you find that the
It's
your character tries to keep moving in, and or does he give her the space?
Well, in the beginning, it is all about him feeling like he can control her to make her behave the way he thinks she should behave. That's the kind of the whole front end of the story.
Mhm.
It's later on that he starts to learn from Angel, kind of what she needs, how
Mhm.
she relates, um, and it's through that he changed, his ego's dropped and he's changed through her. Now, luckily he's kind of willing to listen, if you will, or adapt and change, which, some people aren't willing to do. But it is, I mean, that really is kind of the beginning of the story, is him trying to control the whole situation because that's all he knows. He does not know how to deal with, and honestly, that's the way that he raised his daughter,
Mhm.
was
Yep.
basically
Okay.
the same way. So, um,
So he's
we
seeing
were,
how that didn't work with his own daughter, so now he's more willing to transform to say, "I'm not going to let that happen again."
mhm. It's that and um, some other things that he has from his past that he's not happy about, that he's trying to um, make up for. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
One of the other situations in real life real life versus the movie is I find that in my case, whenever someone else would come around, all of a sudden the softer side of my mom would come out, which is to say, I have nothing wrong with my family. I have nothing wrong with my family. Is there ever a point where, and I call this a Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde, where when it's just you two, you act one way, but when you start, and I know you say with Leah, the behavioral therapist, you might try and put on a different persona to show even more love, or even if it's you're not quite there emotionally yet, you try and really pour on more love to say, no, no, we're doing great. You know what I'm saying? Because
I
I
know what you're
find,
saying. I do know what you're saying. I mean, where you might show a different side to try and get Leah to back off, if
yeah,
that's the question.
yes.
He not in that true sense. He tries to convey, he tries to show that he's making an effort, and he is making an effort. She'll say, "This is what you need to do," and then he'll do what she says, and he's trying to make the effort, but um, those efforts are, how should I put this? So it's not in the sense of saying, oh, look, back off. I've got this, I'm a nice guy. And then inside the house with Angel, he's yelling at her. It's not that kind of an adjustment. He's honestly trying to do the right thing. So it's not a Jekyll and Hyde per se.
Mm-hmm.
It's really him working at trying to make sure that he can keep his granddaughter, and kind of prove to himself that he can raise a child the way that he thinks that they should be raised. So, or make up for what he didn't do with his daughter is probably a better way of putting it.
I love to hear that. I love to hear that because and that goes back to the ego where there's nothing wrong with me, there's nothing wrong with my family. See? And
Mm. Mhm.
it's such a false presentation versus kind of like, and I don't like this expression, but it fits here. Fake it till you make it. I'm not quite there yet, but okay, I'll take your advice and I'll try these things because I hadn't tried them yet. I kind of like that. As I said, I'm not gonna fake it till you make it because a lot of autism is all about masking. And we don't
Mhm.
want the autistic person to fake it till they make it because that takes away the authenticity. But if we can get the people around them to kind of be like, okay, not quite there yet, but all right, sure. I will put on this persona to make it easier. Not quite believing in it yet, but that's what I mean. It maybe it's not the autistic individual who's faking it till they make it because that would take away their authenticity and make them feel like they have to be neurotypical. But maybe the people that are around them being like, all right, not quite sure this is gonna be the best answer, but I'm willing to try. That's what I would love to see.
Well, I think you will see some of that. And
Good.
I'll give you an example, and this is maybe a bad example. Maybe this doesn't fit into what you're thinking, but at one point in time, Leah's leaving the house and she said, tonight's Tuesday. And so Tuesday night's pancake night for dinner. And she doesn't like sitting here on pancake night. She's like sitting over here. Right. So she's giving him kind of like, hey, here are the things you need to know. Um, and his reaction is, what do you mean pancakes for dinner? Like, who eats pancakes for dinner, basically, right? So,
Mhm.
um, that's the way he is. He's kind of like, yes, he wants to do the right thing, and he wants to, he knows he needs to change and all that, but he's like, I just don't get it. This just doesn't make sense to me, right? Um, so it's I don't know if I
Yeah,
if
no,
I
that's a great
illustrated what you
example.
were talking about, but
Yeah.
there is that
Well,
situation.
I like it, and here's why. Because you're not like, well, no, no pancakes. I don't care if it's Tuesday. I don't care if it's pancakes. We're not doing it. And so you're kind of like, well, I hadn't considered pancakes for dinner, but all right, if that's what she's used to, that's showing that you're bending a little bit more toward her comfort level than saying no. Mom never did pancakes before. I'm not gonna start now. So yeah, that would be a okay. I'll give it some. I'll try it on, and
Yeah,
that would be the fake it till you make it. I'll
that
try it
yeah, that
on.
to that point, yes, it is a little bit of a I'll try it on and see what happens.
Right, right. So I see you're wearing the T-shirt. Touch. That's the name of the movie.
That is the name of the movie, Touched. Uh,
Perfect. And let's talk about some time when the public can get a great showing of this. Talk about a little bit
well,
about when it's going to be released, how we'll get to see it, where we might be able to pick it up. Is it a TV?
sure.
Is it a movie theater? How will we get to enjoy this wonderful work of art?
Well, that is still the question mark a little bit. We're in a crowdfunding mode right now to close the gap on some expenses because the the wild part is and you'll understand this chasing the dream, getting ready to film, and 3 days before we start to film, my boss calls me into the office, and I've been with him for 30 years, and says, I don't know if I'm going to be able to keep my business open. I gotta cut way back on your salary. And my plan was to take the next year's bonus and salary and kind of carve some of that off to finish the movie up. And that the universe said, nope, you wanted to do this, you go all you go all in. So
I know that
um
universe. Yeah.
yeah, so now we're all in, but there is the reality right now of trying to close the gap on some finances. So we're in a crowdfunding campaign. It's on Indiegogo. It's a crowdfunding platform, much like some of the others under Touch the Movie, and that'll help us finish up some of the details. But long story short, we'll be going into festivals this summer. That's one way that the film gets exposed and potentially could be picked up by a distributor or sold to somebody. Our desire is to get a theatrical release because you could go straight to Amazon and Netflix and some of the other platforms and get up there right away. The reality is they totally take advantage of the creator. Um, I'd never make my investment back on that, and I mean, the reality is I need to make my investment back.
Mhm.
So we're the other option, if no one picked it up, the other option would be that I self-distribute, which is what I will do if no one picks it up. And so then you'll be able to find it online, but only through my website, or I will take it to select theaters and do some limited releases. When that happens, I'll let you know so that
That'd
you,
be great. On my Facebook page, I put your write-up of your movie and your picture, and I'm hoping that you'll use that as much as anyone who wants to get in contact with you. The Facebook group page, by the way, for my listeners, is the Aspie Bridge. And if you can go in there, you can ask Mark any questions if you put something in. But Mark can also put in where to catch the film and
yes, oh,
everything.
sure. That'd be great. Thank you. I'll definitely do that.
And that
Appreciate
would be a way to keep it going for the advertisement. Now, when we see, because we know as brave thinkers, it's going to be big, it's going to be popular, you're going to make money off of it. Um, you had said you would like to do a little bit of a charitable donation to
Yes.
different organizations that it will help. Now, the one thing that I really want to caution you on is before picking up, oh, this is an autism group, let's send the money there. There are a lot of neurotypical parents that don't that are running an organization called Autism Speaks, but they really don't have the interest of the autistic person. They're just trying to float their own situation. So I think
It's
when
interesting that you
you
brought that up,
yeah,
because I
when
talked to
you
another filmmaker that just released a film, and he got slammed by that organization
yeah, yeah.
because he said, and this was his life story. It was about his child and his experience. And that group, I know of them. I'm not, you know, paying attention to their daily posts or anything like that. So I don't know what their culture is like. I don't know what their attitude is like or anything like that. But he got slammed by a lot of the, not by them necessarily, I think, but by a lot of the members saying, "Oh, this would never happen," and you know, there's no, this is, you know, how could you do this? And he's like, "This is my story. This is my son, and this is what happened. How can you say it wouldn't?" Which I do find interesting.
It's Yeah, it's Autism Speak was started by a bunch of parents who had autistic children, and unfortunately they forgot to leave the ego behind and make it about the children. And instead said, let's start this organization so that we can benefit from all the care of taking care of our kids.
Mm,
So they're not advocating for their children, they're trying to make up for what they lost because their children were autistic.
mm,
So when you find a charity, such as, well, let's just say mine, for instance, you want to see who the individuals at the top of the leadership actually autistic? Do they have their own story? So you could kind of get into it where tell me your story of autism before I find that you're, and we talked about this in Brave Thinking Institute, and I'm sure Sharon talks about this. Sharon is his wife, listener. We talk about it. It's not just a good fit for the client, it has to be a good fit for the consumer. I mean, it has to be all
yeah,
around. It's not just a one-way good fit. So before you let an organization take your hard work, which is so important, make sure that some of the head people have their own autism story and what is their message? What is their mission? For me, I just want to help people get back into society and earn a living above retail so that they can live independently if they're capable of it. I mean, in my situation right now, personally, I could live independently, but because society hasn't accepted the autistic woman as being higher than a cashier or retail agent, living independently in this day and age with the economics of this world is impossible. Which
yeah,
takes
it's a
me back to
struggle.
family, which feels that they have to have control over what I do and where I go. So even if
Mm,
we're independent in attributes in functionality, we're not independent financially. Because, and not because of our families necessarily, although families can say, you can do it, you can still get a full time job. And I'm like, you're not being realistic. You're not hearing what society is saying to me during an interview. You're not there.
yeah,
You're
yeah,
just
yeah.
saying it's a numbers game. It's this game. It's that game. And it's like, do you know that maybe you can go to 25 interviews and not get exhausted, but we can go to 5 and we get exhausted. So just going back and asking the charity, tell me your story. Tell me why you started this organization for me to decide whether or not I want to donate to your cause.
Yeah, no, great advice, and I'll certainly take it because our desire is to tithe to an organization that is doing, you know, doing good around this cause, right? And I don't know what that means yet because everybody has their own charter, um, but the desire is to tithe with an organization, and then there's other, I mean that because that is a symbiotic relationship to, I mean, just to be transparent, that's a symbiotic relationship at some point where they can also help expose the movie, right? So we can tithe back on any profit that we make to them, and they can help expose the movie. Then there'll be other ones, much like your charity, and there's a couple others that I've talked to, where it may not be an ongoing tithing, but it can be a, you know, it can be a lump sum that would do some make
Yeah.
a difference to those folks that are either just getting started or you know, just could use the help. So we're looking at, well, we will do both. Uh, right now, it's easier to find folks like you than it is to find a large organization that wants to have some, anything to do with this. And again, I think some of that is that the community is, in my mind, a little fractioned, if you will. Um, we talk about the spectrum, and yet the community puts themselves into their own boxes, which I find very interesting. That, no, the behaviors are X, Y, Z, A, B, C. And, I'm like, but there's a spectrum here. So to be able to say that this is, absolute is just doesn't make sense to me. And so then we find ourselves in a community that's fractioned instead of together working for the same kind of goal, right? Whatever that.
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah, it absolutely is. Like it's kind of funny. And to finish up the interview, a lot of people do see us as disabled and this, and this because we have this, and this trait, instead of seeing us as I'm sure you're familiar with the Marvel characters per se.
Mhm.
Every one of the Marvel characters has a quirk, a disability, a challenge, but yet they have strengths that are beyond what most people even consider as possible. So I like to think of myself as a Marvel character, the Ashby
I like,
woman.
I
And
like that.
the Ashby Bridge, a lot of people are like, oh, that's after Hans Asperger. I'm like, well, we need to change your perspective there. I like to think of it as a Marvel character where I can see some of the challenges that are in this world that would make everyone's life better. So I go around looking for different ways to improve the efficiency of the way something works, and I try and suggest it. That's not has nothing to do with Hans Asperger. That has to do with the fact that I can see a problem before it exists. And there used to be a show, I'm wondering if you remember the early edition.
Vaguely.
It
Yeah.
was about a guy who got the newspaper at the beginning of the morning when everybody else got it at the end, and he read the headlines, and he would go around and fix the problems of his community so that by the time the 4 o'clock newspaper came out, all of the stories had been changed
Hmm.
and
I never saw it. I
replaced.
just remember hearing the name. It sounds awesome. I might have to look it up.
Yeah, yeah, it's really cool. It's his name was Kyle Chandler or something, but I loved it because it really hit home to me back when it came out in the 80s. That was about when I was in high school in that time. And it was all, as I say, it was about a guy who went out, read the headline, saw what the problem was within the headline, went out, fixed, tweaked one or two parts of it, changed the entire story, changed the environment and the people involved, and the story had a whole new ending. And
That's
then by
neat.
the time the newspaper came out, it was a brand new, it went from a negative to a positive.
Oh,
So
I like that.
that's the kind of thing that I see myself as. I'll go into a job and say, well, this should really be like this to increase the efficiency of it.
I love it. I love it.
So that's
I really appreciate you spending this much time with me today. This is awesome.
this is important. I mean, your movie, and when I saw Sharon talking about it, your movie is so important because I'm hoping that other family members who have an autistic individual in their life start to say to themselves, and this is a great way to end it, start to say to themselves, I need to make the change too. It's not just about them. And that's what your movie does. Your movie says it's not all about Angel changing to fit my needs. It's all about you saying, how can I learn from Angel? How can I become a better person because of Angel? And that's the most important message I'd love to get out to everybody. And that's why I wanted to have you on my podcast, is to say there are people like Mark Vidano who are trying to say to people, you have to make the change too. It's not all about them. And I think society is going to go a long way by saying, and all my bridge builders are on board with this. All my BCI builders are like, yeah, it takes two people to make a relationship different. So would you
Love it.
like to add any final words, Mark?
I think you wrapped it up succinctly and beautifully. How about this? Look out for Touched. Just look out for Touched.
Yes.
We'd love for you to see it.
Oh, I can't wait. I am so looking forward to it. So for now, I want to say thank you to everybody for coming to listen to the Aspen Bridge. Next week, we're going to be talking with Tammy on how your positive body image may impact the way you feel about yourself when you go into society, and how to take away some of the negative habits that might be sabotaging your feelings about positive image. So I hope you'll come back next week and join us. And for now, I want to say thank you to Mark Vidano for coming on and telling us all about his awesome movie.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a great day, everybody.